couple days ago, we flew from Nashville to Chicago. And when we got to the airport, the gentleman who was picking us up at the airport and driving us to the hotel was named Ernest. And when we got off the plane and, found his car, and he had the biggest smile and just radiated positive energy. You know, people like this, that it's just hard to be in a bad mood around someone like that. They fight you on it with their energy. It's almost like they're a Jedi Knight, like with their positive, just life force energy is what I call it. And so he's standing there with a big old smile. And even though this has been a really long stretch of work travel, and even though I have been, like you, so overwhelmed and sad and horrified by the news that is dominating the headlines right now, there was something about his spirit that just lifted us all up. And so we're driving into Chicago, and he's at the wheel and I'm in the back of the car, and we're just chatting up a storm. And in addition to his positive energy, Ernest has one of those voices, these like deep, soulful, smooth voices. So smooth, it was as if it was liquid butterscotch. And I'm just soaking up every word. And if that's not enough, he also spoke in poetry. The kind of person that can just string together a sentence and you find yourself closing your eyes and just nodding along as he is dropping just one beautiful truth bomb after another. And all of a sudden I got this feeling inside me and I thought, I wonder if Ernest is a minister. And so I said, Ernest, any chance you're a minister? And he just, just started laughing like, you got me, Mel, you got me. Yes, I'm a minister. Yes, I'm a minister. And then he went on to explain that, in his opinion, the difference between a pastor and a minister is that a pastor is somebody who is responsible for a church and for the congregation of the church. But a minister is a person who spreads light and spreads positive energy, who ministers by lifting people up. Now, we were not talking about any kind of particular religion. We were just talking about spreading light, positive energy, lifting people up. And so I said to Ernest, Ernest, I am here in town because I have to give a speech tomorrow morning. And I believe that when I am standing on that stage and I'm looking out into that audience, I am spreading light. I am showing people a different way to look at the situation that they're in or the things that they want in life, that I too am in the business of positive energy and lifting people up. And it would be an honor to have you come and to have you experience me doing what I do, because I've been experiencing what you do. And he said yes. He said yes. And it was one of those moments where I just love when you say to yourself, I am sitting right here with this person for a reason. And as we got closer and closer to downtown Chicago, and as Ernest kept on ministering to the three of us in his car, as he was spreading his light and talking all kinds of positivity, I sat there and thought to myself, I am supposed to be sitting here. And he is supposed to be in the driver's seat, and we are supposed to meet. It is just one of those moments. And I want to open you up to a really important idea. That sometimes the light or the connection or the support or the love that you need, it's not going to come from the people you know. Rather, the universe will put a stranger in your path to give you exactly what you need in that moment, even though you didn't know you needed it. And what I didn't know is I had gotten off that plane in Chicago feeling exhausted by my work schedule and feeling so heartbroken over the news right now. I didn't realize how much I needed a little light. And I want you to remain open to the fact that there are going to be strangers that cross your path today, this week, this month, this year, that can give you the connection, the love, the light, the support, the help, whatever it is that you need, without you even realizing it. And you are also that stranger for somebody else. That you can, without even realizing that you're doing it, because Ernest did not step in that driver's seat and go, I'm just going to lift these women up. He was just being earnest. He was just shining his light. And the interesting thing about strangers is, think about this. Absolutely everybody that you love was once a stranger to you. And all it takes to turn a stranger into a friend, or to somebody who supports you, or to the love of your life, is taking a moment to connect with the light in one another. And so Ernest did come, and he was so cute. He arrived bright and early, and I was so proud to have him there. And we sat him right up front in the audience of thousands of people next to our, corporate client, and he just soaked it in. And then when it was over, we had some time in what they call the back of the house, behind, the front of the house at a hotel. We were standing back there, and I said, so, Ernest, what did you think? What did you think? And he said some of the most beautiful things to me. He said, Mel, it was so amazing to sit there and watch you do what you do. And there is no doubt that you are a minister. In fact, everybody, Mel, is a minister, because everybody has the power to spread light and positive energy. Everybody has the power to lift people up. But as you were standing on that stage and you were pouring your heart into every single person there, did you notice? Thousands of people. And every single person was quiet as a church mouse. They were reflecting. They were considering what you were saying. And I want you to know, Mel, it was so much more than positive energy. Because what you do is you make a way out of no way. You are reminding people of their power. You're reminding them of what they really want out of life, that they don't want to be stuck, that they want to feel more. And then he said this. He said, Mel, do you know what you are? And I said, no. He said, you're a lighthouse. And when he said that word, lighthouse, it immediately brought me back to a really incredible childhood memory. I mean, lighthouses hold a lot of importance for me. I grew up in Western Michigan, in a tiny little town right on the shores of Lake Michigan. And if you don't know the Great Lakes, if you're listening in one of the 194 countries where this show is syndicated around the world, and you've never seen the Great Lakes, they're just like an ocean. Like, you cannot see across them. They are huge, huge waves. They are enormous. And so I grew up in a tiny little town that was surrounded by lakes that all fed into the Great Lake called Lake Michigan. And one of my dad's favorite things to do on the weekends, if he wasn't on call and he didn't have to work, was to get up really early and jump in the boat and drive out from the little lake we lived on, through the channel, into the bigger lake, Muskegon Lake, and then out the big channel, Muskegon Lake, and out into the wide, open, and vast Lake Michigan. And what he loved to do is he loved to fish for steelhead. And I would often go with him. Now, here's the thing. Being a little bit of a worrywart as a kid, I was deathly afraid that we would get out there to the big, open, vast ocean like Lake Michigan, and we would be swept away. Like, I had a really active imagination, so my dad would be having the time of his life with a cigar in his mouth, and he's got all kinds of lures in the water, and he's fishing the steelhead run, and my mind would be a spinning. What if the engine doesn't start? What if a storm rolls over? What if one of those big dark thunderstorms comes in, and the all of a sudden the wind picks up and the waves start going and the boat gets flipped over and Dad and I find ourselves lost at sea? And there would be times that my dad would try to start the engine up after we'd been out there for a while, way offshore, and it would go and then it wouldn't start. And then I'd start to panic, and my dad would be like, would you calm down? Just calm down. And then he would say, Mel, we are not going to get lost. Just look. And he'd turn around, he'd point at the shoreline, and there off in the distance was the lighthouse. And the lighthouse that was on Muskegon Channel is a lighthouse called Muskegon South Pierhead Lighthouse. And what my dad would say is, he said, Mel, that lighthouse is always there. And that lighthouse is there so you don't get lost. See, it doesn't matter, Mel, how foggy it is or how dark it's going to get or if a storm blows in. We're going to be fine because the lighthouse has one job. The lighthouse is always shining its light so that it can bring you home. It lets you know that you're never alone and you're never lost. And when I would look at that lighthouse, even though it was kind of far away, I got to be honest with you, it made me feel a little safer. And it made me feel like my dad and I were not alone out there in that big old Great Lake, Lake Michigan, but that we were connected to somebody who could and who would help. And if you've ever been lost, if you ever had that experience where you've been lost, whether you're driving around and all of a sudden you have to pull over because you don't know where you are, or maybe you're in a new city and you're walking around in circles and you can't find your way, or heck, I remember being a freshman in college and I was so lost at Dartmouth College, like I didn't know where my classroom was. So when you're feeling lost, it's really scary. But then there is that moment when either somebody stops and says, "Are you lost?" Or you say to somebody else, "Excuse me, I'm a little lost." And the person says to you, "You're not lost. I know exactly where you are. And I also know how to get where you're going." And that right there is such an amazing feeling to have someone say to you, "You're not lost. I know exactly where you are. And I know how to get you where you want to go." And so today, that's exactly what I want to talk to you about. This feeling that I think is really universal right now, of feeling lost, especially when the world feels like it's very dark. And when you're feeling lost, how can you navigate this? How can you move forward again? And I know that, that's exactly how I felt this week. As I've been watching the news unfold, it feels like a huge, dark storm has blown in, that the fog is here, that we're spinning around. It's scary. And I don't know about you, but whenever I feel like things are really dark or I feel very lost and I'm not sure what to do, I start to feel paralyzed. That's kind of my initial reaction, that I get stuck, I get angry, I feel uncertain, my energy starts to drain from me, I feel so sad. And I'm sharing that with you because if that's how you felt recently, I want you to know you're not alone in feeling that way. And it might not even be that you feel lost. Maybe right now because of what's happening in your personal life or because you live in a part of the world that is in conflict and crisis, that you do feel like you're holding on for dear life, that you are trying not to drown. And I also want you to know, if that's how you feel as you hear my voice or you're watching this video, that you're not alone. There are so many people, unfortunately, hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people that feel that way right now too. And so today, I'm thinking about our conversation not like this is a podcast episode. I'm thinking about our conversation as me sharing with you how I'm feeling. And what I really want to do, because I've been thinking a lot about this, especially since Ernest and this metaphor of a lighthouse, is I want to speak to the situation that we're in right now. And in particular, I'm going to try to shine a light so bright that I hope it reaches you. Because we can't allow ourselves to get so caught up in the darkness that is in the world around us that we forget to love one another. We cannot forget to appreciate the small things or the moments that we have, even when the world around us feels like it's spiraling in chaos. We can't forget to help someone in need. And we can't forget that we, even if we're just watching this all unfold in the news, that we are just one step away from being the one who needs the help. And if you can hear my words right now, or you can watch this on YouTube, I want you to consider something. Yes, you may feel deeply afraid and you may feel lost, but you're not lost. You have you. You're not alone. You're not by yourself, you're with yourself. And there are so many people around the globe who care about you. And you're also not paralyzed. That's kind of our first response, right? When something scary happens, that we disconnect from ourselves, we disconnect from everybody else, we start to hunker down, we feel stuck, we start to get paralyzed. I am here to shine a light on the fact that there are small things that you can do right now. First, to weather this storm. And second, to start to see yourself and what you can do in a different light. My hope is that by the time you and I are done talking today, that you're not going to feel so stuck, that you're not going to feel so hopeless, but that you will feel reconnected to your strength, and you will feel empowered by some very simple things that you can do right now to help yourself and perhaps help somebody else who needs you. I am going to show up today and be a lighthouse. And I'm going to shine a light so bright because I want to illuminate a path forward for you that will help you navigate this moment. A lighthouse is not actually interested in who gets the light. A lighthouse is blinking in a rotation so that the light is there for all to see. It doesn't select or discriminate which ships get to see it. It shows its light for anyone within its reach. I love that. I absolutely love that because that brings me back to you and to this moment and to the awesome, amazing power that you have. See, when I landed in Chicago, I saw the light inside of Ernest. He was just standing there beaming it for anybody who cared to be basking in it. And that light lifted me up. And then the next morning, Ernest saw the light in me as I was just beaming it out for anybody in that audience who cared to allow it to lighten the way. And you have a light inside of you. What is the light? The light is your humanity. It's your compassion. It's your ability to laugh, to love, to hug somebody, to listen, to care. It's what you feel in your heart. And that's why your heart is breaking right now. Your heart is breaking because you're seeing innocent people that you see suffering due to war or natural disasters or senseless hatred and violence. And I don't know about you, but when I watch the news, I have to remind myself, because it's easy to forget this fact, that these innocent people are victims. They are not their governments. And that's why so many people around the world need your light right now. And I want to talk to you about how you can tap into that light. And I'm also going to share with you some of the things that I am doing that are making me stay connected to my light and keeping me grounded and keeping me in a place where I am not getting sucked into this darkness. I am staying above it so that I can help and so that I can stay connected to my power. See, even when nothing seems to make sense, there's always something that you can do. And what you can do right now is to be a lighthouse for other people, to cast your light into this dark storm for anybody who needs it to see it. And what does that even mean, Mel? Well, let me talk about that for a minute. First of all, whenever I feel really low, I find that the fastest way for me to lift my own spirits is to help somebody else. So in whatever way that you can, try to find ways to help other people, to connect, to volunteer, to serve others. However you can do that, when you lift somebody else up, you are being a lighthouse, and it always does come back to you. Help somebody else out. Find ways to be part of the force for good. I know what you're already thinking. Mel, are you kidding me? I am sad and scared and horrified, and I can barely get out of bed, and I'm mainlining the news. You want me to help other people now? I can barely function myself. Well, here's what I have to say. Well, then helping someone else is exactly what you should do. If you can't help yourself, research has found over and over again that helping somebody else not only feels good, but it does you good. And there are a number of reasons why. First of all, it distracts you from the sorrow, grief, fear, and worries that can become this echo chamber in your own brain that starts to make you feel isolated and paralyzed and stuck and full of despair. And by supporting somebody else in need, there are so many interesting things that happen with your perspective. When you're supporting somebody else, you realize you have more power than you think. I'm talking little stuff. You could run errands for somebody. You could work hotlines. You could check in on friends and family. By supporting somebody else in need, you gain a new perspective about your own situation. And there's something magical that happens when you start giving back, because you realize that you do have more power than you think you do. When you sit alone and you tell yourself there's nothing that you can do, you will start to spiral. You will feel more depressed. And I know you know this is true. I mean, just think about the times that somebody has done something nice for you. In those moments when somebody else helps you, you feel seen. You feel lifted up. And the second thing that I want you to do is to be soft with yourself right now. Because the world's suffering, it is impacting you too. In fact, Dr. Tama Bryant, who's been featured on the last 2 episodes that we published, has this saying that whatever is happening out there is happening in here too. And what she means by that is that you are absorbing the energy and the stress around you. Everybody on the planet right now is impacted by this. And even if you're not vibrating with a lot of stress, people around you are. They are worried. They are watching the news. They may not be able to turn it off. They are worried about loved ones. They're worried about what might happen. And this energy is impacting you. And if you are watching the news, yeah, you can turn that off, but you can't turn it off in your body. And so if you're having a hard time concentrating or falling asleep, or procrastination has ticked up, or you feel like you're on edge, or you're starting to slip into feeling like nothing matters and life is horrible, that is an example of how this is impacting you. And so it is critical that you take steps to take care of yourself right now, because you deserve it. And in order to lift other people up, you got to make sure that you start by lifting yourself up first. And so I thought a lot about this. How am I doing that for myself? And I came up with 5 things that I'm doing right now that are helping me to stop the overwhelm and stop the despair and to stay connected to my light, to the power that I do have, and to a connection to something greater than this very scary moment. And so the first thing is spiritual practices. I am a very spiritual person, but since this news began a week ago, I have really become intentional about making sure it is part of my daily, and sometimes several times a daily, thing that I'm doing. And you know that spiritual practices work. Like, one of the things I'm doing right now is praying. I'm praying for each and every single human being who has lost their lives or their loved ones. I'm praying for people who are in harm's way, who are fearing for their lives. I'm praying for those of you that are struggling right now with anxiety and fear and grief. And I'm praying for compassion. I'm praying for healing. And I'm praying for peace. And you want to know what else I'm praying for? I am praying for our collective light to shine brighter than this terrifying darkness that has rolled into the world right now. Since the beginning of time, spiritual practices have helped people through some of the most tragic experiences. So whether for you that means prayer or meditation or journaling or gathering with other people of a similar faith, or even for me, just taking a walk outside, like getting outside, getting off my phone, taking a walk in the woods. Or here's what I did this morning. I was driving down the road, and I have a friend that I've talked about on this podcast that is a flower farmer. She's the owner of Fleur Farm. And she has all these dahlia fields. And I pulled over because I saw her working in one. And I left my car running. And I just silently walked through the rows in her flower field. And as I walked, I took in each individual flower. And I would stop and look at it. And I would look at the bumblebee that was laying there in the center, all drunk on pollen. And I got lost in the beauty of nature. And I'll tell you what, being able to connect to something greater than this scary moment that's going on in the world, it really helps me. It helps me to stay grounded. It helps me to be calm. And that helps me to show up in a very different way during this moment. And if you're listening to my voice or you're watching this video and you're in a part of the world where you can't get outside, just not an option for you, I want you to try visualizing yourself outside in your favorite place, or visualize yourself with people that you love. If you close your eyes and allow your imagination to take you there, it might just really help. The second thing that I'm doing is I am using the 10-5 rule. Now, this is something I do in my day-to-day life, but I have 10x'd it at this moment. And here's what the 10-5 rule is. It's a simple way to connect with people that you know or that you don't know. And every time I share this, I always get people that write in and say, well, this isn't safe for me to do where I live. If you're comfortable, try this. But it is really fantastic. You can use this in a grocery store. You can use this on a college campus. You can use this at work. You can use this on a sidewalk. You can use this at a stoplight. It's wonderful. And here's how it works. Whenever you're 10 feet away from another human being, just look them in the eyes and smile. That's it. Look them in the eyes and smile. And try to hold the smile and your eye contact for 3 seconds or more, because a funny thing happens when you do that. When you look at somebody else in the eyes and you smile, a big toothy smile, you are signaling to somebody else's mirror neurons in their brain that you are friendly, that you are a safe connection, and somebody else's mirror neurons can't help but then mirror your response. And so if you look at somebody in the eyes and they look back and you smile and you hold that smile for more than 3 seconds, you watch. They'll grin right back because they can't help it. We are wired for connection. Then when you get 5 feet away, smile again and say hello. And the reason why this 10-5 rule is so great is because it's a simple and instant way to connect with somebody. The fact is, we are not strangers when we are all suffering around the globe. And we are all in this right now, even though we show it very, very differently from one another. I do not want us to turn away from one another, because when we do that, we buy into the darkness. I want us to turn toward one another. I want us to lead with our humanity, and I want us to let the light in from one another again. The third thing that I am doing that is helping a lot is advice that I got from Dr. Tama Bryant, where she says there's a big difference between staying informed and not inundating yourself with the news. Because how much time you spend watching the news does not equal how much you care. You can care deeply about what's happening with other people and not watch the news at all. I personally do not watch or listen to the news. I read the news. Why? Because I want to stay informed, but I want to protect my mental health. This is a way I can be soft with myself, remember? Because if I let my mental health tank, and if I let my mood and my mindset and all of that go with it, I'm not going to be able to show up in this moment and navigate it in a different way. And so please, try not to stress yourself out by staring at traumatic imagery to the extent that you can. In fact, my husband and I have also required that all 3 of our kids delete TikTok, because the imagery on that platform right now is way too much for your nervous system and your heart to process. And so please do not look at it. Focus on showing how much you care by your actions rather than the content that you're consuming. It's going to be way better for you. Okay. Next, this is the 4th thing that I'm doing that makes me feel a little bit better. I'm reaching out to people. And in particular, I am checking in on my Jewish and my Muslim friends. See, these recent events, they have sent shockwaves through both global communities. Please let your friends know that you care about them, that you're thinking about them. Please let them know that they are not alone in this. And another thing that I love to do is that when I am reaching out to a friend of mine who is really going through something, whether it's this situation that we are witnessing right now, or it's somebody that just lost a loved one or got a scary diagnosis or is dealing with something very traumatic, I always reach out and I check in and I tell them how much I love them. And then I end it with this: you do not need to respond. I just wanted you to know that I'm here and you're not going to go through this alone. And the reason why I love this is because when you reach out to somebody unexpectedly, it feels so good. I mean, think about the times when somebody texts you unexpectedly and you're like, oh my God, that's so nice of them. And when you send the text, you create that light inside somebody else. That's the first gift. The second gift is when you say you don't need to respond. Because if somebody's going through something very traumatic, they do not have the energy to check in with you. And so you give them this beautiful gift when you relieve them of the burden and the guilt of having to and not being able to. And finally, I have been thinking about this metaphor of a lighthouse over and over and over again. And I find it so empowering to think about the role that you can play as an individual in this dark storm. That somehow thinking about shining that light inside of you in a 360 fashion for anyone around you to see or feel, what a gift that is to give other people. And by thinking about that metaphor, it allows me to rise out of the individual emotion or heaviness that I feel so that I can take action and feel like I'm doing something. And the ways that I do that is when I see despair, I respond with hope. When I see sorrow, I respond with love. I'm meeting agitation with kindness. And I'm inviting you to do the same. Do not get pulled into the darkness. As I said earlier, the words that Ernest said to me, we cannot allow ourselves to get caught up in the darkness in the world and forget to love one another and to help one another in need. Do what you can to help yourself and to help somebody else see the good in you and in them. And if you really don't know what to do, just smile at people. Just say hello. Just reach out to your friends. A little bit of goodness goes a very long way right now. I think it's very timely that I'm talking to you and doing this interview. There is so much about your work, your story, the work that you're putting out now that is what I need to hear. And so, I'm sitting here in a home that we were building in southern Vermont. And about 2.5 years ago, I had a cracking, if you will. I think that's the word that you use too, where I'm like, I can't keep going like this. I've got to make some changes. I can't continue to be a workaholic. I cannot be racing all over the place. Like, I have got to make some changes. And so now I am sitting here in my new home that is still under construction. And we've just sold our home of 24 years outside of Boston. And I, for the first time in 23 years, am experiencing such devastating anxiety about all the changes that I've put in place that I've literally spent the last 2 weeks completely disassociated. And I went back on medication. And I'm having this experience where it's almost like I'm on a really bad drug trip. And I know that it's going to end and that the feelings are going to level out. And yet I want the feelings to stop.
Okay. Well, first of all, I'm so proud of you for getting back on the meds. There's a time and season.
Yes, that's true.
And as trauma survivors, we get activated when big change happens.
I hadn't even thought about the fact that it has a link to all the trauma I've been working on.
That is the whole thing.
And that's why your book, Happy Days, was just like, holy cow. I mean, this just landed right in my lap at the right time. Because why don't you tell the story about how, because I found the introduction of the book really interesting, about how this actually started in 2016.
Yeah. Well, it's not dissimilar to what you're referencing. And I'll begin by saying that, actually, let me first just speak back to you, and then I'm going to share that story. So I want to send a lot of compassion and gratitude to the dissociated part, because that part of you has done a really good job just getting by each day. Gratitude to the anxious part, love and compassion to the anxious part for revealing that you need a little extra support right now as you do deeper work. Okay. And just hold you there, because when we've been there and then we come back, it's like there's shame around that. There's so much terror around that, but it's a beautiful witnessing to see that these parts of you are coming up to give you information. And I just want to honor you for that. Are you able to hear me? Because you're frozen. Frozen. No.
Oh no, here we go. Okay, go ahead.
Good.
Sorry, we lost you for a second. I don't know what's happening.
That's okay. I'm recording my end completely.
Okay.
So I just wanted to start there and just thank all of those parts of yourself for just being so brave and for doing their hard work right now. Yeah. And I very much understand on the deepest, most soulful level, everything that you're experiencing. It's been my life experience as well. In 2016, I had the outside world on lock, right? I was like, been interviewed on Oprah, half a dozen books, was speaking all over the world, very Mel Robbins. And on the inside, I was dying. I had a mantra on repeat. I'm cracking. I'm cracking. I can't go on like this. The word cracking is a very profound word or metaphor for what is truly happening when we are opening up to, awakening to, and stepping into facing deeper wounds. And in my case, facing dissociated memories. I eventually, after a year of just complete and utter breakdown, I had a dream. In the dream, I remembered being sexually abused as a child and confronting it as an adult. When I came out of that dream, it was the most real experience I'd ever had. And days later, really came to accept that truth, that did indeed happen to me.
Here's the thing that got me through kind of the loss of the talk show and the way that I think about things, that I hope helps if you're listening and you're kind of struggling with something. I believe, and I went into the talk show saying this to myself, because there's a 99% chance, based on the history of people that have tried to have a daytime talk show, that it was going to fail. And I went in there saying, I'm not doing this because I expect to have a successful talk show. I'm going to put 1,000% into it so that I have no regrets and I wouldn't change a thing. But I'm going into this because I know that there is a skill, a person, or an experience I am meant to have that will help me for the next chapter that I can't see coming. Mm-hmm. And the experience was, number one, meeting Mindy Borman, who is my executive producer, now my business partner and CEO. And it was also in working with a team of 130 people and finally being in the right seat on the bus, Lewis.
And not having to manage everything, but being in your lane.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And having a team and you not being the one doing everything. I know that feeling.
Well, it's not even that I was doing everything. It's that I didn't have anybody managing me.
Right. And so your mind is going to go into like opportunity, as opposed to focus mode.
Right. And so if you ever wonder why it feels like we're running in circles, it's because I'm the one leading us in circles. Right.
Yeah.
And so it's a very hard thing to spot when you're in the middle of it.
Yep.
But when I got into a machinery that operated in a way where I was in the right seat on the bus, it was absolutely liberating. And that was the biggest gift of all. And then the third thing is, I think the daytime talk show and being face to face with your audience and having such a big daily audience, it was really amazing to be able to have an impact on a large number of people who feel forgotten because they're a little bit older, if they're still watching TV. And a lot of the folks who are still watching TV at home during the daytime do not have the resources that you and I have, and may not have access to therapy or live in a community where it's stigmatized. And so having a platform that was reaching people that really appreciated this kind of content, and also working with a really diverse range of experts, absolutely incredible. So I felt like I was organizing a killer dinner party conversation every day with real people's problems and the world's best experts. And so you kind of do a similar thing here on your podcast. So I know I want to continue to do that, but I'm in the middle of creating it. So if I said anything other than, I know it's events, I know it's more courses, I know it's collaborating with more people and getting outside my comfort zone. And I also know that as I set out to write down what I want to do, there's so much freaking fear that I have.
Why is that?
Because I still feel like I'm not worthy. I feel like I don't deserve it. Like it's old bullshit. And I think that's the other thing about patterns, everybody, is just because you identify. And for me as a kid, for whatever reason, I have my own version of feeling invisible and feeling like I'm not good enough. And so my way of coping, both with my anxiety and being a survivor of sexual abuse, and wanting love, which we all need, is I was like an overachiever. And so I'm the kind of person that's super busy and a go-getter because it got me attention. And if I was the one that was super busy and achieving, I not only got praise, but it also insulates you from other people not picking you, because you're the one in a leadership role doing the picking.
Right.
And so there's a part of me at the age of 51 that is realizing that, you know, these feelings of feeling unworthy and this hyper drive to try to achieve, it's all coming from a place of feeling inadequate or like what I'm doing is not enough. And
still,
so that's
at 50, having the talk show, having a best-selling book, having the Audible originals, having the platform everywhere, having the impact, it still don't feel, being the most booked female speaker in the world, like you still don't feel.
It's so stupid. It's annoying. And human beings are annoying. We are stuck with this wiring. Like if you think about it, like all of the crap you believe is probably a hangover from age 0 to 10. That as adults, we walk around thinking the same stuff we thought as kids. And I can't stand that I feel that way, but knowing it, it allows me to catch it before it stops me from having an event or writing that next book or taking a risk.
What do you think is the biggest fear is? Because you say not worthy or not feeling enough. Is that?
I mean, it's just people liking me. I think like being a people pleaser.
Yeah, we're so similar in every way. It's crazy. It's great.
I want people to like me.
What happens if they don't like you?
It's lonely, dude.
What happens if 99%? What happens if 99% of people like you and 1% doesn't like you?
Oh, I don't give a shit about that.
Okay, but if it's like if it's 50-50,
I think that the work that we all have to do, every single one of us, whether you bulldoze, whether you people please, whether you avoid conflict, whether you're impulsive, whether you yo-yo your decisions, whatever it is that is your pattern, you know, the constant trashing yourself. I think the journey of your whole life is figuring out how to truly like and love yourself.
Yeah, it's so true. I mean, I remember this was my whole life, was never loving myself and needing to go prove to others originally that I'm worthy. This was happening in sports and business until I started opening up and accepting myself and taking off the mask when I turned 30, talking about sexual abuse and just kind of saying, screw it. I don't care what people think about me anymore. This pain inside is hurting so much. It's not worth living with it. So I'm going to start sharing and allow myself to heal and allow myself to finally love myself. And it's so funny that we could just write a book with 2 words that says love yourself. And that's all the book needs to say, because a lot of us never remember to love ourselves, remember to acquire skills, which are important. Remember to love other people, remind ourselves to take care of our health. But if we don't love ourselves internally, if we don't think we can give ourselves a hug because we're not deserving of it, then none of this stuff is going to matter to the point of we're always going to need to do more to feel something.
Right.
It's
well,
crazy.
Nobody teaches you how to do it. And see, that's the thing. And I mean, if you look at human development, we're the only species that literally can't survive without another human being taking care of you. And so we are biologically hardwired to bond with other people. And that is from the very beginning of when you come out, bonding with somebody else and making sure they pay attention to you is your survival imperative. So you are born needing somebody else. And I think what ends up happening is there's never that kind of clean break or pass off between needing your parents to take care of you, needing your friends' approval to fit in, to truly having ownership over giving yourself what you didn't get, giving yourself what you needed. And that's the piece that I've been doing a lot of during the great pause, is slowing down, because so much of my busyness was fueled by, praise me, love me. Am I doing enough? Please tell me I'm doing okay. Okay, I can breathe now. I'm okay now. And when I slow down, and maybe it's a function of the anxiety, that's when things get scary, because that's when you've really got to be with yourself. Mm-hmm. And so it's in getting off the road, slowing down, recognizing that I'm super grateful for all the opportunity. And I know the work that I'm doing makes a tremendous impact. And I particularly love hearing from mental health practitioners that the 5-second rule, I've heard from so many people in inpatient psychiatric wards, Lewis, that use the 5-second rule in the videos we put on YouTube in their group counseling sessions with people. And knowing that it is helping so many people, it is like the greatest gift on the planet to know that it's making a difference. But I know that in this next chapter that I consciously create, I want to have more fun. I really want to love the process. Yeah. I don't want to make it so hard on myself and be gripping everything so tight. And it's really easy for me to see it in other people because I know what it feels like in here. I'm working hard to break the patterns that still hold me back. And the big one that holds me back is bulldozing. It's literally when I start to feel any level of tension. This is particularly true in my marriage. I'm married to a saint. Thank God Chris Robbins meditates every morning. It's the only reason why we've lasted 26 years. It's how he puts up with me. When I feel my whatever emotion rise, I immediately raise my voice. Wow. It's how I assert power in the relationship. And I am so committed, Lewis, to breaking that pattern. Wow. And being a more fun person to be around and a kinder person to be around.
Wow. That's beautiful that you're getting this during the pause. What do you think was the biggest lesson you learned about yourself during the talk show experience before the pause? Because you covered so many topics and you had to research about so many things, and you brought so many people on, experts, but then just everyday people going through their challenges. What's the thing that you learned that was new? Because this is something you've been studying for years and talking about. Mm-hmm. And was there anything new that you were shocked about? You learned about yourself or about human behavior?
This is going to be first of all, there's 2 things. The first one, I'll make it deeply personal. And the second one will be a thing that I learned. Okay. the talk show experience was almost like it's weird. It almost feels like it didn't happen.
Really?
Yeah.
It was your
Maybe
whole
it's
life for like 2 years.
Yeah, but 175 shows. It was super intense. It was almost a spiritual experience because I had dreamt about it for as long as I could remember. And I stepped onto that talk show set with such a level of mastery.
Mm.
And the reason why I had a level of mastery is because I could look backwards at my life and see that I had been heading to that moment for my entire life.
Mm.
That the ability to create trust and take a complicated amount of information and get down to the human connection immediately, that began back in 1994 when I was a legal aid attorney doing criminal defense work in New York City. My ability to understand what victims of domestic violence go through goes all the way back to 1986 through 1988 when I was a crisis intervention counselor volunteering on a domestic violence hotline.
Wow.
My ability to read a teleprompter had to do with being at CNN. My ability to work 18-hour days was a function of the reality TV show world. My ability to relate to somebody who had lost everything was a function of what Chris and I had gone through.
Mm.
My ability, like just everything all of a sudden was like, and it's why I can say with such urgency that you have to have faith that this is happening for a reason, that this is leading somewhere. And if you only just stay awake and you pay attention to what your body's trying to tell you in those moments when you have a signal come up. Like I think right now, aren't you so happy you're a digital entrepreneur?
I've been speaking about building an online business for over a decade. And so now I'm like, oh, I know what to do. And everyone's coming to me for the solutions. And our team is digital, so we are virtual, so we know how to run everything. And we do Zoom meetings every week already.
Yes. So. And so I literally, when I think back 3 years ago where I was like saw one of your videos or Gary's videos or somebody, I'm like, oh, I just need to start filming the book lines at these. And it was a moment. It was this little amount of wisdom inside of me that I listened to. And I am telling you, that is the power. You got to tune out the noise and you got to learn how to make what I call a quiet decision.
Yeah.
A quiet decision where you and you hear what your heart is urging you to do. And so I sit here because aside from the talk show ending and the book getting canceled, I was literally like, okay, so online courses, we do Zoom, we've got this amazing social media platform, we'll figure it out. And luckily I was like a squirrel with a nut and I put a lot of money away because I was not going to make the same mistake twice.
Smart. Yeah. And you've been doing a lot of research and you've been diving in and making sure you make the right decisions. We've been texting and chatting about different stuff. And
so the biggest insight though, is we did a show that had I can't believe I can't remember the gentleman's name. He's from Washington, D.C., and it was a show about heroin and heroin addiction, or the opioid addiction and heroin, and how this has been an epidemic in the Black community for 20 years. And it only became a big national story because opioid addiction got linked to heroin abuse and it became a white problem. And so he came on the show with 3 former addicts. It was the most profound show that I have ever done because I learned something that I never even understood as a public defender. And that is living in poverty and living with systematic racism creates trauma. And when people experience trauma in their bodies and in their nervous systems, your response, particularly if you have no resources or treatment, and the vast majority of us do not get treatment for the trauma that we experience, most of us want to numb it. And he connected the dots between the chronic trauma that the folks that he was serving had experienced growing up in extreme poverty, around violence, dealing with racism and bigotry and violence, and the natural inclination to reach for something to help you numb that pain.
Mm-hmm.
And he connected the dots between deep emotional trauma and addictions that result in a way that I had never heard anybody explain so eloquently. And it was such an eye-opening experience.
You wrote in your book, staying in a relationship with a narcissist just is really and truly not an option. And you listening to us as you're reflecting on everything that Rebecca Zung is sharing with you based on her personal experience, her professional experience, and all of this extensive research, the 40 million views on her YouTube channel, like she knows this inside and out. You have this phrase, today is a great day to start negotiating my best life. And if you see yourself reflected in the comments or the stories that Rebecca is talking about, there are things that you say, Rebecca, that you need to stop doing immediately if you want to get out of a narcissistic relationship. What are the things you need to stop doing in order to cut off that supply and get out of there and negotiate for yourself?
Yeah. So step 1, don't run. Step 2, make a U-turn. Step 3, break free. So in the strategy, which is the first step, you have to have these action steps. So in that first action step, step 1, don't run. Stop allowing them to speak to you in a disrespectful manner. I mean, that's the very first step. I know you feel like it's so overwhelming and it's fearful and it's scary and it feels like, oh my God, you're going to have all this backlash. And I know that because you feel like they're going to have that tantrum, right? But that very first boundary that very first baby step can be, I'm not going to allow myself to be spoken to in a way that's disrespectful. That can be your very first step today, because I know you have to course correct. It's like, stop that conditioning, 180-degree turn, right? Stop that conditioning. So first boundary is that start looking at them as if they are a child having a tantrum on the floor. Start putting that invisible shield down around you, and like Superman having, bullets off your chest, or Wonder Woman with the gold bracelets. Remember, they didn't attach themselves to you because you have so little value. They attached themselves to you because you had so much. They devalue you because you have so much value. So remember that. Start looking at them like that. Stop defending yourself. Never explain, justify, or overshare. So, just start looking at them as if they're a third party. Just say, we can discuss this when you have calmed down. Or, I can see that you are upset. I can see that you are angry. Observing their behavior. Let it go by you. Almost like pretend like the words are like looking, whizzing by you. I always say it's sort of like dodgeball. When I was a kid, dodgeball was a big thing, So like I always remember like the words just like they're looking at you, hitting the wall.
So is that, just so I know, because we're going to get a ton of questions, which is, okay, wait, how do I allow myself to not speak? How do I allow myself to hold a boundary and not be disrespected when this person barrages me with texts or yells at me and then I get paralyzed? And you have these essential phrases that you coach people to use to disarm a narcissist and observe the tantrum, acknowledge it, but not let it hit you. Can you share a bunch of those phrases that you coach people to use?
Yes. You can say things like, I agree with you. I agree with you that we're not going to agree. I agree with you that that's your opinion. You can say things like that. I agree with you is always a good one, because they kind of hear, I agree with you, but just make sure that you follow it up with, I agree that that's your opinion. If they're saying things like, you're a terrible mother or whatever, you just make sure that, I agree that that's your opinion. Your triggers are not my responsibility. You can always say things like that, because they often say, it's your fault this or your fault that, something like that. But you can always make sure to remove yourself from a situation where you're not being respected.
I love these phrases. I understand that's how you feel. Your approach is not working for me. Let's discuss this when you're less emotional or angry. Do you have any coaching for the fact that I think most people are afraid to say that because they're then going to invite narcissistic rage?
Mm-hmm.
So when you use one of these phrases to connect with your power and to not allow yourself to be disrespected, I understand that's how you feel.
Mm-hmm.
And then the person raises the stakes and starts raging at you. What would you advise somebody to do that is just starting to practice these boundaries and create boundaries and not run away from the situation?
If they feel like they are going to be in harm's way in some way, then they really may need to remove themselves from this same physical space.
Okay.
There's a saying that says that, if you don't want to be a doormat anymore, get up off the floor. And, you train people, you condition people on how to treat you. And that's, it may sound harsh, but it is the absolute truth. And narcissists are the best ones for that. That's just the truth of the matter.
So if they don't change and somebody's either unwilling or too scared to leave right now, how can you truly negotiate with somebody like that?
Well, you can, because what I teach works.
Rebecca, I just have to say, I love the swagger. Well, you can, because what I teach works, because that makes me believe you. And you're referring to your SLAY method. And SLAY is a 4-part framework that you follow in the courtroom and in life for dealing with, negotiating with, and winning against a narcissist. Can you explain what SLAY stands for?
SLAY stands for strategy, leverage, anticipate, and you.
So let's start with the first one, S. What does it stand for?
S stands for developing a super strong strategy, which is the first part of that is creating a vision. If you're just trying to communicate in general, if you're just trying to figure out what to do with them, if you're in a family situation, if you're just trying to, figure out how to deal with them in life, if it's your neighbor, if it's your tenant, what is it that you want? So many times people are like, I just want them to stop, or I just want peace. That's not a goal. What you want to be specific about what you want. So
is there a reason why peace can't be a goal? And let's take the example that you either have a mother or a father who is a narcissist. And all you do want is peace. You are not ready to become estranged and to remove them from your life. And you want to figure out a strategy that helps you know what your vision is. How do you figure that out? Because, to your point, you always talk about these 3 C's that you can't change them, you can't control them, and you can't, what's the other one?
You can't cause it, control it, or cure it.
That's right. You can't cause this, you can't cure it, and you can't control it. And so knowing that, how do you create a vision if it's your mother or your father? Like, what questions do you ask yourself?
I still think even if it's your mother or father, you can create a more specific vision around what that relationship should look like for you.
I don't want to be triggered all the time. I don't want her or his BS to trigger me or make me feel manipulated.
Right. Or even put that in positive terms. Like,
Do I have to?
Yeah.
Put it in positive terms. Okay. What does that look like?
Right. So, we will see each other X number of times a year. And during those visits, we will have these kinds of conversations. And, this is how I will define the relationship. And, I think that you should be more specific like that, because
I love that.
yeah, I think that will be, because you get what you envision in life, right? So
I love that. I love that because you're right. I think you're so conditioned when you're dealing with somebody who's narcissistic to think about it from what you're enduring versus what would you actually want. And a lot of times it's like, I'd like to be able to walk into a school function where my ex is and not feel like I've just left my body in a panic attack. I put that in a negative, but that's a very common one that I noticed, is that people dealing with exes and feeling completely enmeshed and triggered and wanting to be able to feel powerful and unaffected anytime I see them.
right. Yeah.
Is that
but
positive enough?
no, I think it,
Okay.
I mean,
I love
think
you,
it-
Rebecca. Help us.
I think it should be, I want to be able to walk into a school function and sit next to them and be able to discuss our child together and be happy for our child together and celebrate her together and go out for pizza together afterwards and laugh together during the show. Or I think that if you can be like really specific like that, that it would actually be more beneficial for you.
Beautiful. L stands for leverage. What does that mean?
So leverage is where you're actually creating that motivation for the person to want to be, squeezed and incentivized to want to come to a resolution with you. And in the case of a narcissist, it's going to have to be a situation where that diamond level supply is potentially going to be threatened. Or, there are times where you could potentially, what I call, fluff for favor, vomit later, so where you're
Fluff for favor, vomit later.
yes, where you sort of fluff up their ego in order to get something, give them something they want in order to get something you want. Because
I do this all the time with someone in my life, actually. Now that
Yes.
I'm realizing I have really developed this strategy. I do deploy a strategy. I'm realizing as you're talking to feed a particular person's ego that they are getting their way, that they are the most important person in the room. And I do that as a manipulation strategy so that I can get what I want.
Exactly. Just as long as you know that you're only doing it in order to get, what you want. So if you have to go shower or vomit later, then, you do the thing. But, it's in order to get what you want later. So, but more often than not, what you kind of have to do is use your documentation, because they lie so much, because they're so careless, frankly. I mean, they don't think you're ever going to keep track of all the different times that they say things that are, they'll say something in a text message, they'll say something in an email, they'll say, I mean, honestly, they are very irrational. As we talked about at the beginning of this show, how many times their memory is faulty or whatever. But if you keep track, that's how you create your leverage in a negotiation. And you say, hey, you said this, you said this, you said this. I am going to present this in court. I call it ethically manipulating the manipulator. You can call it whatever you want. Many times empaths are uncomfortable with that sort of thing. You have to be on the offensive when you are dealing with a narcissist. it's not doing anything other than what works. I mean, it's not anything that's, unethical at all, but you have to do the things that are offensive. Whereas most empaths are like, I don't want to fight. I just want to resolve this peacefully. Let's just come to a resolution. But if you want to come to a resolution and you want them to stop jerking you around and you want them to leave you alone, this is what you have to do, because they're never going to leave you alone. They're never going to stop. So many people come to me and they say, oh, we're still in court. It's 5 years later. They won't leave me alone. And I say, well, then you haven't figured out what your diamond level supply is yet. You haven't figured out how to, what your leverage is yet.
I bet that part, figuring out your leverage, is the hardest part because you feel so spun around by the narcissist. So let me just see if I can track with you here. In your 4-part framework for negotiating with a narcissist, it's SLAY. So remember, everybody, S is strategy. You have to have a vision of what you're looking for and that you want to get out of the relationship. And again, you have to have this going in or you're going to be spun around like a top. And the example that you gave, Rebecca, is my strategy is I'd like to sit next to them in a school function and discuss our child in a civil manner. The next step is L. And L is for leverage. And again, this has to do with that narcissistic supply. They're always going to want to feed their ego. This never ends. You've learned this. And you have to accept that as fact and then use your leverage to give them what they want, even if it makes you vomit later. And you're doing this, you're giving them the supply, the attention, the praise, the this, the that, the weekend trade that they're asking for. You're giving them that, even if it may, I don't want to have to do this. Why? So you can get what you want. And the reason why this is important is because when you supply them with something, what happens? You go into the cycle where they're nice to you. And lots of leverage, by the way, Rebecca is teaching you, comes down to giving them what they want, but also documenting what they say, what they do, and how many times you say something and how many times you do something. And why do you need the documentation, especially if you're in sort of a confrontational kind of thing? And you don't have to be in court for this, by the way. This might be that you constantly argue with your parents about who's hosting the holidays. Keep a record. Keep a record so you have proof. I'm dead serious about this because this comes down to leverage and to supply, right? And this also keeps you from going crazy. And a lot of this has to do with the fact that when you give them something, they're in a good mood, so you can sneak in what you want. See how this works? I love this. So now that we understand the strategy and the leverage, A comes next. And you say, Rebecca, you and I got to be able to be 2 steps ahead. Always. You got to anticipate. Can you teach us what you mean by that?
So A is where you can actually figure out the type of narcissist that you're dealing with, because they will all act a little differently in negotiations. And so a covert narcissist is much more likely to use the flying monkeys and pretend like they're the nice one and I'm the victim and, oh, poor me and all of that. Covert narcissists are going to be the first one if somebody has cancer to show up with the basket and be right at their side in the hospital and, that sort of thing, but smearing everybody on the side, so you just have to be careful of who you're dealing with. And then the anticipation is that also that knowing that they're going to try to bait you. I always say they go fishing, they go, shh, and then they reel you in like this. And then once they have you, you're in the mud and you're down there.
That makes a lot of sense. So what's the final part of the 4-part SLAY framework?
The why, which is you standing in your authentic power. For you on the offensive, and then also your mindset. Because 100% of winning is your mindset. And if you don't believe you can win, nobody can help you. And, I have so many people who have said to me, that I can't win or I can't do this or whatever. And I always say to people, do you want to be right about that? Or do you actually want to win? Because you can be right or you can actually get out of this and win, but you can't have both, right? The good news is that there is a way to deal with them. Most people think that there's not. Most people say you can't negotiate with a narcissist. You can't deal with a narcissist. There's nothing you can do. That it's pointless. It's hopeless. The good news is that there is actually a framework. It is actually pretty simple. They are actually pretty simple to understand. And that once you get on the other side of it and you stand up to them and you grab that power, the freedom that you feel, the feeling that you feel is actually beyond better than anything else. The people who I've helped through my programs are so powerful now. I actually now have master coaches who are becoming, they're graduating from my coaching program now. And it is beyond anything else that's more magical and more powerful than ever. That's the beautiful thing. You and you alone define your value. You can win.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. All right, so today's my 52nd birthday. And normally on my birthday, I wake up excited because I feel like I've just been handed a clean slate and the opportunity to create a brand new year. And I spend the day reflecting on the last couple of years, and I spend the day brainstorming about what I want to create this year. And this year is not a normal year. I did not wake up feeling excited. I woke up feeling lost. Because as I thought back over the last few years, it's been an incredible adventure, but I've experienced a tremendous amount of change in my professional and personal life that has just knocked me on my knees. From losing my daytime talk show, to having my book contract rescinded, to having the speaking business basically implode until at least another year from now, to not being able to be with you face to face, to not being able to work with my team face to face. I just got rocked. And then on top of it, our son wanted to go to high school in Vermont. And so we are in the process of moving from the home that we've been in for over 20 years and raised our kids up to a very small town in southern Vermont where I know very few people and I feel very disconnected. And the result of all this is I feel stuck in between two lives. My old life, which has ended, and a new life that I have yet to create for myself. And when I look ahead to the future, I feel overwhelmed, I feel lost, I feel disconnected. In some ways, I feel like I don't even know who I am because I feel so disconnected from the things that make me feel alive and happy. And so what am I going to do about it? Part of me honestly just wants to sit here and cry all day and feel sorry for myself, but that's not going to make me feel better. Here are the steps I'm going to take. Number one, self-awareness is critical. So recognizing that you feel lost or disconnected or suspended between your old life and your new life, overwhelmed, whatever you feel, it's so important to name it. Because when you name it, you bring it out of the feeling in your body and out into the world, and then you can do things to tame that feeling. Number two, the most important thing that you should do is move your body, because all this negative emotion is trapped in your body right now, and it's only through exercise and motion that you'll move it out of your body and you'll change your emotional state. So I am going to go put on an exercise tape and work up a sweat. Will that solve all my problems? No. But it will put me in a better emotional state so that I can think more clearly and more optimistically and start to see solutions. Number 3, the best advice about happiness is happy people do things that make them happy. And so after you move your body and you change your emotional state, do one thing that makes you happy. And for me, I'm going to go out and buy myself some beautiful flowers. I've been doing a lot of writing this morning, just dumping all my thoughts onto paper. And I think journaling out your thoughts is a really important thing to do when you feel stuck or overwhelmed or suspended. And then finally, continue to remind yourself that this is temporary. This is temporary. This moment is temporary. These feelings are temporary. This feeling of stuckness and overwhelm is temporary. Oh. Ooh. Oh, oh, oh. Those sneezes are temporary. And I think the biggest thing about that mantra, that this is temporary, is so is your life. And maybe that's why birthdays are overwhelming, because they always make you think about the timeline of your life. And so after you become self-aware and you move your body, which moves your emotions, and you do something simple that makes you happy, and you dump all your thoughts on a piece of paper, remind yourself that this is temporary and force yourself to start dreaming again. Because when you give up on your dreams, you give up on yourself. And I think that's one of the reasons why I woke up feeling lost today. When I look ahead, I don't see anything I'm looking forward to, because I haven't created something new to look forward to. And that's the secret. How you're feeling right now is a function of what you see in the future. And if you see overwhelm and a blank page and nothingness, that's how you're going to feel right now. And so I want you to dream big. I want you to put something on that paper that's out in that future, that calls to you, that gives you something to look forward to go for. That's how you will pull yourself out of it. And that's how I'm going to pull myself out of this too. So that's my birthday message. Not really inspiring. It's authentic and it's real, because this is where I am right now. And I also know that despite how low I feel, I have a choice. I have a choice about what I do about it. I have a choice about who I'm going to be in the face of it. And I have a choice about what comes next. So by God, I'm going to 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, push myself to create a future that really empowers me. And I want you to do the same too. If you could do anything for me for my birthday, it would be for you to dream really big today. That would mean everything to me. Hey, it's Mel. Thank you so much for being here. If you enjoyed that video, by God, please subscribe, because I don't want you to miss a thing. Thank you so much for being here. We've got so much amazing stuff coming. Thank you so much for sending this stuff to your friends and your family. I love you. We create these videos for you. So make sure you subscribe. Mwah.